Well, I think clearly if you were a hitchhiker and were picked up by any of the lunar missions, 12 would have been the one that would have been fun to tag along on. You know, they were all these Navy buddies. I mean, like I think Pete Conrad and Dick Gordon had been wingmates on a carrier before, you know. I mean, like they'd all known each other, flown together, felt comfortable together, and they had a gas. You know, I mean, like that, you can tell listening to the tapes from those days. I mean, they had a lot of fun when they went. And hopefully everybody had at least some fun, you know, I mean, but they're the ones that you really, there's no question in your mind. These guys had a good time.
I feel that way. I thought the three of us have always been fairly close. We've had a relationship prior to ever being in the space program. And it was a very comfortable feeling. To fly together. I've always accused Pete and I of being together so often we think alike and we communicate without speech. And it's a very unique experience. I don't think any other crew comes to that point.
We had trained as a crew. We were the backup crew for Apollo 9, and then we trained, which it was maybe a year and a half or two of training, and then we were the prime crew for Apollo 12, which is another 9 months of training. And we were real good at it as a crew.
When we first had to interface with the scientists, the paleontologists, the planetologists, and the geologists, and the seismologists, and all those learned doctors, they wanted to do all this fancy science on the moon. We let them design Apollo 12, the scientists. We said, where do you want to go? Where's the next place you want to go? Where do you want to land? You tell us exactly where you want to land, and we will land exactly there. You go plan the whole damn what you want these guys to do. What you want them to look at, what you want to find at this site. You train our crews to exactly what you need from them. You do this with the surveyor, the whole bit. You tell us exactly what you want, and we will do it.
Pete Conrad and all of us were very good friends. Pete was one of the, as many people know him, he's a very gregarious, funny, typical, maybe a stereotype of the test pilot who, get into anything and fly it, that sort of thing. And the Apollo 12 crew with he and Dick Gordon and Al Bean were just a delight to work with. They were a lot of fun.
The rocket itself was almost like 40 stories tall, you know, and that's more than the Statue of Liberty. I think it's on a par with the Washington Monument, I'm not sure, and and every inch of it is full of exploding fuel. You know, I mean, it's equivalent to sitting on top of an H-bomb or an A-bomb, I mean, or enough of a bomb to where you don't care what kind of bomb it is. I mean, you're gone if it doesn't work right.
Here we are, spent all our lives in a risk environment. You acknowledge that fact going in, and you don't dwell on it. You don't let it bother you. If the damn thing blows up, you're going to be dead. That's the least of the consequence. I'd rather do that than get smashed up and spend the rest of my life as an invalid.
We spent 6-7 years eating, sleep, and breathing, doing this job.
Sure.
And we were really spring-loaded trained. The only time you ever saw anything normal was when you flew the flight.
Here are these guys that have spent all their lives learning how to fly, learning to be pilots, be at the controls, and during launch there's really very little they can do except for just strap in and ride it.
Getting in the spacesuit in the morning and riding the van out to the pad and riding the elevator up to the top and getting in the command module, all that is so interesting and so amazing. Just think about it now, it's kind of amazing.
they're the heart rates that they monitored in mission control. I mean, like almost invariably showed higher heart rates during launch than at any other portion of the flight, including when they would land on the moon. Because when they're landing, they're driving it. You know, when they're blasting off, they're just sitting there. And they were as scared as they ever got.
I can recall the fellow in the house of in the mission control was counting down 10, 9, 8, ignition sequence start, 7, 6. Now, he said that, but still his engines are 360 feet away, so I didn't feel anything. And 4, 3, when he said 3, then I began to feel a shaking and a rattling. And when I was observing, as I observed the shaking and rattling, it was more than I imagined. It was more than I thought was safe. And I can recall thinking, maybe this is going to come apart. Maybe this is shaking more than it should, certainly more than any airplane I'd ever been on. It just was tremendous vibration. And as this ran through my head, I hear him say, 1 liftoff.
Pete Conrad reports the your program is in. Tower clear.
I'm pitching a roll program and this baby is really going.
We launched on Apollo 12, and about 30 seconds into the mission we got hit by lightning. And we never practiced that. No one imagined that could happen in space. And it lit up more cautionary warning lights than had ever been on any space flight before since. I mean, there was nothing close to this. And they all came on, and Pete started reading them off. And he read almost every light up there, particularly anything that had to do with the electrical system.
I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out. I'm not sure you get hit by lightning. Fuel cell lights and AC bus light, fuel cell disconnect, AC bus overload 1 and 2, main bus A and B out.
It turned out that when the lightning hit, it more or less knocked everything out on the spacecraft. But luckily, the booster wasn't affected, so the big Saturn V kept pushing and getting us up higher, and I thought we might have to abort, but there was no reason to rush into it because we were gaining altitude, which was a safer condition.
The curious thing about it is Dick, who normally gives me good advice. He leaned over, he read a few lights, and I'm thinking, maybe he'll tell me what to do. He didn't tell me a doggone thing. He went back and started talking to Pete, and so I was sitting over here still not knowing what to do. Fortunately, the ground had a good idea of what had happened. They'd observed it, and they made some suggestions, which I implemented, and everything turned out okay.
Al did a great job getting the electrical system back online during the boost phase. So
That's
that
right.
really
That's
worked
the
out great.
first time you never helped him.
I know it. I didn't know what to do. It was my vehicle, and I didn't know what to do.
Okay, we're all organized again, Jay.
We've had a couple of cardiac arrests down here too, Pete.
I was fortunate enough and I got onto the problem quickly enough and made the call to the flight director to fix it. And of course, he told me later, Jerry Griffin, that when the call came, he didn't think the call was going to be about a fix. He thought the call was going to be about an abort. And so it was a harrowing experience to get that vehicle into Earth orbit.
But I can tell you the adrenaline was really pumping. And it sounds a lot cooler to me now that I listen to it than I remember it. I remember it as being very, very, it got my attention. Let me say it that way.
We got to Earth orbit, got things back online, and couldn't find anything wrong with the vehicle. Seemed to pass all of our tests, and we were faced with well, that was pretty exciting, but everything is working here, so shall we come home or shall we get on with it?
Somebody had said, hey, we'd get struck by lightning, we'd decouple the command and service module guidance from the S4B. We'd go into orbit in that thing, and 3 hours later we'd be on our way to the moon. I'd say, you're crazy. You couldn't check the spacecraft out. There's no way we could do that, and yet we did.
Apollo 12 Houston, the good word is you're go for TLI.
Hoopy-doo, we're ready. We didn't expect anything else.
We didn't train for anything else, Pete.
You better believe it.
We have data and thrust is go. Burn looks good.
No, I remember looking at the window saying, I hope that doesn't break. You know, still you could see through it. I'm going to die. That's a feeling that I haven't had much of my life, that death was 5 inches away.
After a while, you'd see the moon would go by, and then after a little while, the sun would go by in the window, and after a little while, the earth would go by. And you began to understand how back in the old days man began to evolve his understanding of the world and the universe. We began to think we were the center of the universe because it all went by the windows as we looked out.
And I can remember looking back at the earth and seeing it go. At first it goes away very fast, almost like the fastest elevator. And it's big and it's starting to get small, but it's going away. And you're thinking, boy, everybody's going away that I've ever known. They're going that way, and the three of us are going this way. And it kind of is shocking. And I can remember looking at the earth when it got about that big then and thinking, you know, everybody I've ever known, they're all back there. And here we are. There's billions back there. Here we are here. And it's kind of scary, but I wanted to be there, but still kind of frightening.
We're trying all these things that we didn't have in Gemini, like toothpaste and shaving, and we're really having a ball up here.
Roger. All dressed up and no place to go.
Oh, we're going someplace. We can see it getting bigger and bigger all the time.
Dick Gordon told me that he had this trick on the way out there because, you know, when you go to the bathroom, you would save a lot of it. You know, they'd have these feces bags, you know, I mean, like that they were supposed to bring home. And Gordon used to put them in the food compartment, hoping that Bean would grab one for a midnight snack or something, you know? I mean, these were guys that they went to the moon with a sense of humor.
I wouldn't do anything like that. And hope somebody got up for a midnight snack, sure.
Apollo 12, Houston.
Hello, Houston. Yankee Clipper with Intrepid in tow has arrived on time. I guess like everybody else that just arrived, all three of us are plastered to the windows looking.
When we were falling towards the moon, I had no idea that we wouldn't fall right into the middle of it and get killed. And the computer said we would, said we'd go behind it by 60 miles, but there was no way to tell it. So there's your life and future is more contained on numbers and computer programs in spaceflight than it is in airplanes. I'd look at the computer and it'd be printing out, not printing up something, but reading out something. I'd think, I hope this thing keeps running. Because if it doesn't, we got a big problem.
Our motion to the left is not as apparent as our motion towards the moon, and therefore we have the decided impression that we're going right into the center of that baby right now. Okay, Houston, we're maneuvering to the burn attitude.
Roger, we copied that 12.
We're beginning to go into darkness at this time.
Roger, 12.
Matter of fact, we're there.
Hello, 12, Houston, you're go for LOI.
Roger, Houston, go for LOI. Burn checklist is complete to -6 minutes, and we're holding at that point.
The whole thing was as Neil and Buzz didn't land where they were supposed to. They were 4 miles from where they were supposed to. So it befell on us and engineers to figure out why they didn't land where they were supposed to.
NASA decided to demonstrate this by landing near a crater that was a specific crater, a crater where a Surveyor unmanned spacecraft had landed some 33 months earlier. So they targeted us for this crater, and we targeted for the center of this crater, which was 656 feet in diameter. And I can remember us thinking, boy, I don't know where we're landing, but it'd be nice if we landed near there. Not in the middle, but we'll target there.
They picked Surveyor 3 because it was way down a Copernican ray, and they thought that the material around that came from deep within the crater Copernicus and would not be the same as lunar surface material. So that's how the site actually got evolved down to that particular Surveyor 3.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Houston out, over. Okay, it's go there, Capcom on the hot fire. Okay, all flight controllers going around the horn, gonna go for undocking.
Okay, retro, go. Fido, go. Guide, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go.
Capcom, we're go for undocking.
Well, we went to the moon, 239,000 miles away, made several orbits, came down to land, and when our lunar module pitched over, Pete looked out the window and could see where we were going to land.
Pitching over at 7,500 feet, expecting to see the snowman crater pattern and seeing 10,000 craters out there. I'll never forget that, and not having the foggiest idea where it was.
Okay, you're out of 19,000 feet. I got some kind of a horizon out there. I got some craters too, but I don't know where I am yet. Okay. In a Viper P-64. Okay. I'm trying to cheat and look out there. I think I see my crater. Hey, baby. I'm not sure. Coming through 7.
I read from the computer a system of numbers, which he could look through some marks on the window with and see where, if we didn't touch it, where it was actually going to land. He looked through the window and we would land right in the center of Surveyor Crater, just where we were targeted.
Hey, there it is. There it is. Son of a gun, right down the middle of the road. Outstanding. 42 degrees, Pete. Hey, it's targeted right from the center of the crater. Look out there. I can't believe it. Amazing. Fantastic. 42 degrees, babe. Just keep talking. Slide it in. Coming down at about 99 feet a second. You're looking good.
Traffic Houston, go for landing.
Over 1. Roger. 40 degrees, LPD, Pete. 40 degrees. So fantastic, I can't believe it.
Getting to land. That's the
36 degrees. You're 12.
Shortest flight time in the world, that 1 minute and 30 seconds or less, whatever it was you had on the stick. That's the only time you flew it. And I really did have to fly it. That where we were supposed to land was not suitable. It had big boulders in it. I had to fly it a little bit further around.
Hey, you're really maneuvering around. Yeah. Come on down, Pete. Okay. 10% fuel. 200 feet. Coming down at 3. Come on down. Okay. 180 feet. 9%. You're looking good. Gonna get some dust before long. 96 feet. Coming down at 6. Slow down the descent rate. 80 feet. Coming down at 4. You're looking good. 50 feet. Coming down. Watch for the dust. 40 coming down at 2. Looking good. Watch the dust. Coming down at 2 feet. You got plenty of gas. Plenty of gas, dude. Hang in there.
30 seconds.
18 feet. Coming down at 2. He's got it made. Come on in there. 24 feet. Contact light.
Roger, copy contact.
Pro. Yeah, pro.
To go back to Apollo 11, a newspaper person who was a friend that was also foreign, and I thought had reasonably leftist leanings, and anyhow, we were having this discussion, and this person was absolutely convinced that the United States government propaganda office somewhere had written these great words for Neil to say.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Then I said, okay, if you think that that's the case, we'll sit down here and we'll figure out what I'm going to say. So I figured I'd say something to the effect, it may have been a little one for Neil, but it was a big one for a little fellow like me, seeing I was the shortest person in the office.
Down to the pin. Man, that may have been a small one for Neil, but that's a long one for me.
I bet this person $500, which was a reasonably large sum of money in those days. I thought that if I could get $500 off a communist, that was probably pretty good. Person then realized that there wasn't propagandists, but they reneged on the bet, and I never won the money. I was never paid.
Hey, Al, yep, can work out here all day. Just take your time. Dum-da-dum-dum-dum. Dum-dum-dum-dum.
I would just feel good. It's a good feeling because everything about you is lighter, and so I felt stronger. I felt like this is a great day. You know, I can jump. Look how high I can jump. Look at how light this is. I just grab this and move it over here, and normally it's pretty heavy. So it gave me a feeling of being strong and fast, and and feeling good.
Man, does that limb look small back there?
Pete, now we show you're 1,200 feet from the limb.
Okay. You know what I feel like, Al? You ever see those pictures of giraffes running in slow motion? That's exactly what I feel like.
They tried to rush through and get us the first color television camera. And it was the old system, you know, it was a camera that had a color wheel in it, and for all our training, all we had was a block of wood. And I think this camera showed up like 3 days before the flight, and Al and I never laid eyes on it.
Okay, what change did you make? I hit it on the top with my hammer. I figured we didn't have a thing to lose.
Al was setting it up, and he waved the camera around, and he wound up pointing it into the sun, and it did not have a light level sensor, and so it burned the camera out.
Being on the moon is you're unprepared for visually what everything looks like. I mean, like, there's no sense of scale or distance, you know. I mean, like, even out in the desert, you know, you see a telephone pole a half a mile away, you know. I mean, to where, like, that telephone pole cues you what your distances are. There's nothing on the moon. You know, there is no way to tell how far away anything is.
Shortly after the flight, somebody asked him, how did you guys navigate on the moon? And Al said, I don't know, I just followed Pete. I had a hard time finding what the right craters, just because I didn't lose my sense of direction, but I sure wasn't really positive which crater was which.
How about a grapefruit-sized rock? That's what I'm holding in my hand, and these other rocks that I was talking to you about are pretty well buried, and they're pretty large. I don't think I could get one of them going. Houston?
Roger, we copy grapefruit size or any size is fine.
Well, I mean, it's just a big round rock, and we were at the point of collecting unusual samples. Here was it.
That's not the way it goes, Pete. That was the extent of Bean and Conrad's knowledge of geology.
True. That's true.
And as much as they tried to learn geological terms, they came up with a grapefruit rock.
I thought that was very descriptive. The scientists on the ground had a very good mental picture of what that rock looked like.
Yeah, like a grape.
Starting to come in. Hey, I'll tell you what we're parked next to. Yeah. We're about 25 feet in front of the surveyor traces.
The backup crew must have gone through a library of Playboy magazines,
right,
and kept clipping out Miss Playboy or the month or this, that, and the other thing, interspersing those pictures throughout the checklist.
Got through those pages, and I had to turn the page again, and then wound up with the Playmate of the Month, and I that one really did take me by surprise. I was not expecting that at all, and of course I couldn't say anything about it over the radio, so I was doing a lot of laughing, and people they weren't sure why I was laughing, but I don't think they wanted to ask why I was laughing either. So you know, some of the outside people thought that I was being very frivolous, and I might have even been intoxicated on the moon, but that wasn't the case at all. I was just laughing at these in-jokes, and I obviously couldn't talk about them over the air.
You gotta get this control there, Come on.
Well, the several times that I fell down up there, usually from backing up and hitting a rock or something like that, I would fall so much more slowly on the moon than I did on the Earth, that I never was in danger of puncturing myself. If I started to fall backwards on Earth, I'd just go clunk. But there, falling slowly without light gravity, I could usually turn around and just catch myself very easily with my hands, and then I could just push like that and push right back up.
Al and I wanted to come up with a gimmick to sort of fool the PR guys, and so I went and got a timer that fits the Hasselblad, and I snuck that on board, and Al and I were going to go over and stand next to the surveyor and have both our pictures taken, you see. And we knew that these guys would take one look at that and they'd say, man, that's the picture, and they'd launch it to the world before somebody would ask the question, who took the picture? Got out, put the thing in the bottom of our rock collecting bag. I suddenly realized that now we're going to get next to the surveyor. I got to get that timer out of the bottom of this bag, which is now completely full of rocks. And so we can't talk. We can't talk about it. So we're giving each other sign language. And the ground says, it's time for you guys to take a rest.
Get in there. Get in that bag. There you go. In the bag. In the bag. In the bag? Yeah, wait a second. Yeah, I got to zip it up. Good chill. Copy, it's in the bag.
Well, we're supposedly taking a rest, except we're hauling rocks out and holding them in our arms, and we're working our can off. And obviously our heart rate is not going down, and though they're saying, doesn't look like you're resting, what are you doing, or whatever, we're saying, oh, nothing, we're resting, and our heart rate's and we're digging around and digging around and digging around. Make long story short, I never could find this thing. It just eluded me.
Yankee Clipper, Houston. Hello, yes, Clipper here. Clipper, you were sort of the forgotten man for a little while. We're all eyes are on you now. We're with you.
The command module pilots were the only people who were ever by themselves. I mean, the other two guys would go down and land on the moon, and they were real busy all the time. They had mission control talking to them constantly. So they never had time to just kind of sit back and think about where they were. But the command module pilots, I mean, like, stayed in orbit all by themselves, half of which they were on the dark side of the moon and couldn't even talk to Earth if they wanted to. So they had plenty of time to kind of sit back and just look around and realize, wow, I'm at the moon.
We did train, or I did train to return by myself, went through all the mission activities that I would have had to have operated the command module by myself as opposed to having three people. But I never concerned myself with that, and I knew they were going to come back. It would have been a very, very unpleasant day if they hadn't, let me tell you. That'd have been 3 days of pure, not terror, but real sorrow to come back alone. I don't even like to contemplate that.
I don't either.
Well, I'm sure you don't.
No?
We show you're 3 hours and 7 minutes into the EVA, and we'd like you back to the LEM to start the closeout in 10 minutes. That's at 3 + 17.
At the smoke to get back to that lamp, we're a long way. Okay, and then we ought to dust each other off. Man, we are filthy. Okay, coming up the ladder. Gosh, you're shaking the whole mill. Sorry about that.
They're back inside getting ready to go, and of course, I mean, they've got their big checklist, and Bean is working like crazy, and so he's got everything ready to go about 2 hours beforehand. And he's got nothing to do but sit there and be nervous.
And the ground wasn't saying anything, and all of a sudden, I began to think, do we still have radio contact, with the ground? Because nobody had said anything for quite a long period. So we called him and asked him, and Pete said to me, I can remember him saying, you getting a little nervous? I said, yeah.
But you'll get over it. I said, this is your first ride. I said, besides, Al, if it doesn't light, look at it this way. We become the first permanent monument to the U.S. space program on the moon.
I said, yeah, that makes me feel real good.
Conrad had just sort of scratched that itch for a couple hours, I mean, like, that's the way astronauts were, I mean, and of course, 12 went just fine.
Pete punches the button, 5 seconds, big bang as these bolts blow. And so looking out the window, it was like riding a very fast elevator. And so up we go off the moon. And I'm looking out the window, and I'm looking at the computer and looking out the window. And as we go up, it goes up to 60 feet, about straight up. And then it pitches over and starts to get velocity. We had to burn 6 minutes and 5 seconds to get into orbit. And there's no gauges really on your ascent stage engine to see how it's doing. The idea being, if it isn't doing okay, what are you going to do about it?
316 feet above the lunar surface. boy, you're so quiet. File, I don't know what. Mark, 30 seconds. 30 seconds, 177. 1,594 feet above the lunar. That's pretty good. We're on our way. And in 1 minute, all right, 20 feet. Okay.
And Pete leaned over to me and he says, you know, Al, how would you like to fly this thing? And I thought, well, that'd be fun because I hadn't flown it up to that time. I'd just been doing my part of the job. And so as I started to put in my first thrust, I said, wait a minute, the people down in Houston at Mission Control aren't going to like this. And he said, don't worry, we're on the backside of the moon, they'll never know it. And sure enough, he'd thought of everything. And so I flew it around a while and felt good to do it. It was just a good memory of a commander that thought about his lunar module pilot and wanted to get him to enjoy the flight.
I have heard the story about Al flying the lunar module, or Pete letting Al fly the lunar module, but we couldn't tell that on the ground. And if they did it when we weren't looking, or they did it in a way that we couldn't tell. I only heard the story after they got back. Sometimes I wonder about stories, you know, after years pass, they tend to get better and better. But I suspect it wouldn't surprise me at all that Pete turned it over to Al and let him fly it for a while.
The command module pilot is the one who's basically in charge. The lunar module is passive, and the guy comes in and docks with them and takes them home. And that's a very difficult rendezvous and docking. And the two pilots of the two ships have to know each other pretty well.
I'll say everything's tied down, but man, oh man, is it filthy in here. We must have 20 pounds of stark dirt, all kinds of junk.
Mr. Pete, that'll be an interesting zero-G.
Al and I make look like a couple of 2-minute coal miners right at the moment. We're happy.
So are a lot of people down here.
We were very dirty, and was all this lunar dust was floating around in there. When we got up in rendezvous, Dick took one look at us and said, "I'm gonna let you guys in there. You look like a bunch of coal miners or whatever." So we started. We finally figured out that we'd undress in the LEM and pass it up to Dick. But the more we got undressed, the dirtier we kept getting in our underwear and everything else. So the next thing I knew, we're down to our altogether. And so not only were we the first lunar streakers, but I guess I figured that if something happened and it blew up when we jettisoned it, why, I'd go out of this world the way I came in with nothing on.
But somehow going fast again made me feel like we were headed back home. And I think that Neil Armstrong said that the time he felt like they were going to pull off the mission is when he got in orbit. And I agreed, because you're going fast again. You feel like once you're going fast, you don't have to go a little bit faster, and then you can head on home. So it was a really good feeling to get into orbit.
We have acquisition of signal.
Apollo 12, Houston.
Oh, Houston, Apollo 12, en route home.
Very good. Apollo 12, Houston, we're ready for TV anytime you want to send some down to us.
Okay, we're trying to get into a good position right now. The normal one is a little bit later, but we're leaving the moon so fast we thought we better kick it.
Our trajectory was such on the way home that about 100,000 miles out, it was 100, wasn't it? That we nipped in the line where the Earth fully eclipsed the sun, and we were between the Earth and the moon. And so what we had was an absolute full moon behind us, and for the first time, an eclipsed night Earth, so that there was no sun, and instead of seeing a black, as you see in the photographs, you don't see the night Earth. What we did see was the full night Earth in moonshine, in full moonshine. We could see the land masses, we could see thunderstorms from 100,000 miles out, we could distinguish the ocean and the clouds, and I think we're the only ones that saw that.
The command module hit the atmosphere at a pretty good speed. I mean, like, you know, essentially escape velocity coming back too. So I mean, it's 28,000 miles an hour, somewhere in there. And when you hit at that speed, it's just like a meteor, and you ionize the gases around you to where you're cut off from radio communication. and normally it's about 3 minutes.
As far as I'm concerned, the most spectacular part of the mission that I experienced was the re-entry and landing. I mean, that is spectacular. Coming back in at 36,000 feet per second, 25,000 miles an hour, and you are hauling the mail across the surface of the Earth.
I remember this spectacular green ionized flame pattern that was 20, 30, 40, 50 miles long. I don't know how long that thing was.
When we looked down at the islands in the South Pacific, they were going by so fast, it was unbelievable. And the dynamics of it is so rapid. You hit the atmosphere, and 8 minutes later, the parachutes are open. So it's a very, very rapid event.
Go ahead. Roger, the Hornet is on station, just far enough off the target point to keep from getting hit.
Hornet reports a sonic boom a short time ago.
I'm in Houston, and the blind air boss has a visual contact.
One of my jobs, sitting in the right-hand seat with a little window in front of me, was to take a 16mm camera and mount it in the window. After the main chutes came out, take and dismount the camera and set it in a bag next to my seat. During the entry, everything went as planned, but somehow I got behind the checklist, and when it came time to dismount the camera, for some reason, I decided not to take it off the bracket and put it in the bag. When we hit the water, that camera and bracket came off the mount, which I didn't know it would do, but such a hit, and it hit me right here. In fact, I've thought that if that thing had hit me in the middle of the head, it might have killed me, because it really came off there. And fortunately, it hit me a glancing blow, and apparently it knocked me a little unconscious. It was luck, because I think if I'd had a little bad luck, I could have gotten killed right there just because I didn't follow the checklist.
And what's the first thing Conrad does? The next guy to go to the moon is his best friend Jim Lovell, who's going to fly on Apollo 13. And on 12, they had gone over the landing site for 13, which was up in the mountains of the moon for the first time. I mean, Conrad and Armstrong had both landed on the plains, where it's very flat. Lovell's supposed to land up in the mountains. And so Conrad comes back and goes up to his friend. In fact, doesn't even say it to Lovell, he says it to Marilyn Lovell, Jim's wife. He says, well, you know, we went over Jim's landing site while I was up at the moon. And he says, really? What did it look like? And he just goes, you know, I mean, that's the kind of games they play on each other.
If you lose your sense of humor, if you lose your ability to laugh at yourself, in these things, and you are a bunch of robots, and you probably are going to go bananas or have ulcers or whatever it takes. So, you know, I think that a certain amount of levity is almost a requirement to keep your sanity within the astronaut group, within the ground group. And I think that we laughed at each other and laughed with each other, and I found that to be the right thing.
Pete Conrad went on to become the commander of the first crew to fly to America's space station Skylab in May 1973 and stayed there for 28 days. After retiring from NASA, he became a vice president of the space division at McDonnell Douglas, conducting research on a new generation of single-stage to orbit spaceships. Alan Bean became the commander of the second mission to Skylab in July 1973 and stayed there for 59 days. After leaving NASA, he has pursued a career as an artist, painting dozens of scenes from the Apollo missions, portraying the feeling and adventure of what the Apollo program was all about. Dick Gordon was originally slated to become the commander of the Apollo 18 moon mission, but all of the lunar trips after Apollo 17 were canceled in the budget cuts of 1972, and he never flew again. After leaving NASA, he joined a Japanese company, helping them to gather American and Russian space artifacts for a space museum and theme park in western Japan. Apollo 12's tremendous success with a pinpoint landing on the moon, flawlessly setting up several scientific experiments on the lunar surface, and bringing back almost 100 pounds of moon rocks, set the standard of excellence for all subsequent Apollo missions.
It's like a bunch of, you know, teenagers going on a camp out, you know, was sort of the attitude that they went into it with, and they really did have a good time, and still did everything they were supposed to do. I mean, did a terrific good job. You know, you can enjoy yourself in life and you know, still do a good job. And they really proved it. You can go to the moon and enjoy yourself and still do a good job.